Great. As we sort of in the previous panel, we discussed quite a lot about the sort of more, general innovation, technology, scaling up, and some of the challenges that companies are facing. Let's now just talk specifically about sort of recycling, reuse. We have heard earlier in the plenary that it's all about reuse, right? So we know that it is essential. It's a critical element of sort of more sustainable water systems. But despite the sort of growing urgency, it feels like the sort of adoption of recycling as a core part of operations is relatively slow, and there are obvious challenges. So let's just address those. And maybe we can start with you, Richard. Can you just sort of give us an overview of, first of all, like how important water availability for industrial production is sort of on the side, and why is reuse feel so logical? Why is it so important?
Yeah, thank you. As we've heard today, many sectors are completely reliant on water for manufacturing. So we're thinking paper, food production, minerals extraction, energy production, data centers. The list goes on. And without access to water, the plants don't operate. The businesses don't function. And yet we're seeing water availability come under pressure from three strands, really. So climate change, we've heard about increasing frequency and severity of drought, means that water isn't available from the local water body anymore during the summer. Even public water supplies might be at risk under some scenarios. So we've got climate change, we've got environmental protection, abstraction from rivers and groundwaters need to be cut back to meet environmental targets, for example, the Water Framework Directive, which means new abstractions may not be permitted, or even existing ones could be cut back. And then you've got increasing demand for water, so economic growth, population growth, and the transition to the new economy, hydrogen production, data centers, they're all increasing the demand. And we can put numbers on these. So in England, we've got a very kind of forward-looking national framework for water resources. We need 5 billion litres of water per day to solve those combined challenges by 2050, and that's just for public water supply. Another billion on top of that for all the industrial and non-public use. To put that into context, that's about 20 to 25% of total supplies. That's really massive. And so what businesses need is access to sustainable water for the long term that's in a really resilient way. The most sustainable, most resilient water is to actually not use it at all. Water efficiency has got to be the starting point. And then it comes to local reusing what you have on site. And then the third most sustainable ways is water recycling, to bringing recycled water into site. So I think we've got big challenges, and the way to solve that through a clear hierarchy: non-use, local use, recycled water, and then only looking at off-site, non-potable or potable supplies.
Absolutely. So again, I guess it also depends on the specific conditions, right? So it's like what are the right solutions? So, Sandrine, obviously in your operations around the world, around Europe, you have a very different locations. Give us a sense of how recycling sort of look like in those different contexts, different locations, and do you sort of target different things? How does it do you target quality, efficiency, etc.? Does it vary across locations?
Well, thank you. For those who don't know, Pernod Ricard is the #2 wine and spirits player in the world. So we do have production sites, over 90 production sites spread out across the world, just to give you a bit of the scope. I love using the phrase, one size does not fit all, and you'll understand why. In terms of water, it is critical for our industry because it touches everything we do. So when you think about it, we have raw ingredients, that are grown through agriculture needs water. Then you have all the processes, the malting, the mashing, the fermenting, the distilling, the bottling, and the cleaning processes. So water is absolutely critical. In terms of how we address it at the moment, I think we understood this morning, it's no longer a resource. Water is no longer a resource, but it has become a resilience issue. So to mention, to answer your question, how do we look at it? So we do have ambitious goals, and everything we do is taken through two angles. The first of which is optimizing our water use, and the second of which is protecting water quality, obviously imperative for our products. And all of that is done through the resilience lens. So in terms of efficiency is where I'm getting at. Distilling is a very water intensive, about 70% of our water usage. So that is a major hotspot for us. So what are we doing in that area? First of all, we'll tighten up our systems, so working with digital controls and flow meters to spot leaks early and remediate to those. And second of all, it's all about reuse, or closing that circular loop. And I'm going to give you 4 concrete examples of those spread across the world. So in Scotland, for example, and other parts of the world, we've integrated MVR technology, which is mechanical vapor recompression. It's all about capturing and recycling the steam that you use within your distilling process, which means you use much less water, significantly less, for the cooling towers. And the win situation on that as well is that you use much less energy. A second example, I'm going to skip to Ireland at this point, is in addition to our wastewater treatment plants, we use reverse osmosis, so filtering the water through a membrane to get rid of all the external bodies so that you have pure water. And that will be reused within our cooling systems or boiling systems or other cleaning processes. The third example is rainwater harvest, again, in Ireland. And it's all about capturing that water, again, filtering it and using it as non-potable. It's important to note that all of these water reuse are not being used in or touching the drinkable part of the product. Right. And the fourth example is Absolut in Sweden, using the leftover of the distillery as part of the processes as well. Mm-hmm. So to answer what are, in different parts of the world, we're concentrating on different areas, whether it's circularity in Sweden, whether it's in Scotland, looking at how you can stabilize that seasonal water supplies. Right. So there we're looking at nature-based solutions, something we haven't touched upon a lot today, but nature-based solutions come into play.
Absolutely. And I would love to hear more about that as well. But just on sort of, I think that point that you're making is sort of about fit for purpose or, just tailored solutions, right? So just moving to Rossella, in the construction sector, and obviously we heard earlier that sometimes water can be a hindrance in construction sector. What does a sort of fit for purpose look like?
Thank you. Construction has a lot of similarity in water issues, as Sandrine and Richard mentioned. But Sandrine, I particularly like your one size doesn't fit all. And I'm going to recycle it, if you allow me to, just to stay in theme. Because in construction, really, you have fixed facilities, or just in the case in Laing O'Rourke, even own manufacturing facilities, but you have a lot of different sites. Just for context, I work for Laing O'Rourke, and Laing O'Rourke is the UK largest private contractor. but we also have a strong presence in Australia, and we operate in the Middle East, meaning there is a lot of different variation. And in the UK, we can have up to 20 live construction sites at any given time, plus fixed facilities in terms of offices, and then the factories. It means, again, one size doesn't fit all, because if you have a project in Glasgow, in Scotland, it's very different if you have a project in central London. In terms of usage of water. But there are certain things that are the same. So as it just was said, yes, water can also be an issue, because if it rains a lot, you need to remove it from site to avoid damage and issues. And there should be a very strong system to deal with it. Again, permitting, constraints, some things that we can touch upon it later. But also recently, water is is resilience, is resource, but is richness. And then the way we have seen this in terms of really becoming a key priority for the business is that even water scarcity can fundamentally hinder operations and make it as such that we cannot go as fast as we're supposed to. So critical things. So water is used in a number of applications on a construction site. You might not be familiar with it, but one of the most common is about concrete washout. You see a lot of these cranes, a lot of this big machinery that pour concrete on the buildings that we use. The machinery has to be washed. And it takes a lot of water to avoid contamination and then to make sure that you go ahead with construction and then the equipment doesn't ruin and nobody gets damaged. In order to do that, to deal with this large volume of water, you need to have a system fit for purpose and then to allow water recycling in it. And that's really important. And there are a lot of different technologies, but for us, really addressing what are the best options on the market, address the return on investment, making sure that they're fit for purpose in any particular site. Again, it's important. And again, you can use rainwater and then filter in such a way. But again, that's critical. Then another thing that it's quite important that has already been touched is around metering and measuring, because then it touches the point made earlier about using less water should be the first point of call. And again, the one thing that I would really like to point out is real-time live metering might cost a lot more, but it pays off quite significantly. And when I use the example of one of our factories where having like live metering allowed us to identify leaks almost immediately and then actually almost to have an ROI realized on the spot. So again, you cannot reduce, you cannot monitor what you cannot measure effectively. So it's the first point. And again, recycling as much as possible with the right technology. Take into account all the different geographical or even client conditions. So 2 key points for construction, but I think like all sectors could probably take some of this learning as well.
Absolutely, and these are fantastic examples, and we will explore the sort of challenges a little bit more. But before that, Therese, Rossella mentioned that they're sort of the ROI, and we've heard a number of sort of good examples where there have been sort of win-win, benefits. But you even say that the sort of circular water reuse can deliver the sort of highest ROI across sustainability improvements. Can you talk about that a little bit? Sort of what do you mean? Where are the returns actually coming from? How do they compare?
Yes, very happy to. But let me quickly introduce myself. So I'm Therese. I work for Grundfos. We're a global solutions provider, and we connect water and energy. So we help optimize water and energy, but also the performance of great companies like Pernod Ricard. And so we manage the water and the flow of water. and we deliver that ROI, and I will come to that, what that ROI is. But I think the first step to understand why there's a list of results and impact that we can connect with, and so return on investment, is by understanding and seeing that water is not just a environmental strategy or a side goal. It is really a business strategy. And if you start to see that water is connected to that, then you also understand that when you manage the water well, it helps to drive down any kind of risk related to cost, so your financial impact, but also related to supply chain volatility, to your license to operate, so also your social potential social scrutiny. So there's a lot, if you start to see that that is important and connected to water, not just an ingredient or an enabler in your process, then you can also understand that when you manage that well, and when you manage water, energy, and also the process, so the performance, then you come to an ROI, so results linked to obviously reducing your freshwater intake. And when we do support our customers with water circularity, so reuse after reduce, to your point, Richard, then we see that it's very easy to get up to an average of 50 to 70% of reducing freshwater intake. We can help customers reuse 80 to 90% of their water. If you manage to do that, then there's also a link to energy, because a lot of these processes are together. So you will reduce the energy use. That will reduce your costs, but also your CO2 emissions. That will also reduce the amount of chemicals you need to use. There's been some great examples already. So it has a direct impact on your costs, on your OPEX. And if you then start to connect the dots there, then you will see that will help to drive that business resilience, your supply chain, give you a better license to operate. And so all those ROIs, and if you monitor and really bring them together in business cases that we do for our customers, then there's a return on investment well below 2 years. And we have those examples. So it's really also encouraging to hear a lot of more focus on reuse and seeing what we can do, because we can deliver impact in a pattern. Right. So it's scalable.
Absolutely, and that's fascinating. And also just hearing the sort of returns of, reduction of 80 to 90%. That's huge. But maybe sticking on that point, then, is like, okay, if the sort of technology is ready, the ROI is clear, then why are not more businesses sort of using this at scale? Therese, from your perspective as a solution provider.
I think there's a multitude of elements, but let me pick on two where I think also now with having the EU water resilience strategy, there's good momentum. I think one is to enable financial incentives for it. So as I just mentioned, the business case is there, the ROI is really attractive. However, it is an investment. So we need to help businesses and the coalition of the willing also at the regional, local level to have a bit of a nudge also from a financial perspective. So I would say that's one of the things that I hope also will come out of this water resilience framework, the strategy. And second, what we're seeing, specifically working with global brands, is that we need much more harmonization between different regulations and policies, because our customers don't stop at the border. They have facilities across the world, in Europe, but also outside, of course. And so it's extremely difficult if you can reuse water in country X, but you cannot do it in country B, because our customers and companies like Pernod Ricard, Heineken, Arla, but also Microsoft, they're looking for scalability. You can't create this patchwork of little things you do in your different sites. So really enabling that with a good financial incentive model, but also looking at how can we integrate the existing policies and also make them more coherent so they're not fighting each other, will really be two strong levers that I would like to highlight.
Right. And financial incentives, you also mean the pricing
Yeah, that can absolutely be part of that. So I think the price of water, or the true price of water, there's a lot that we can say.
Yeah.
But I would love that also with the help of the European Investment Bank and the European Commission, we get some incentives, whether it's tax rebates or all kinds of like easy applied incentives from a financial perspective that can just nudge that financial decision at company level.
Absolutely. So financial incentives, the regulations. Richard, I know you sort of had mentioned that also, obviously, regulations play a vital role, but also awareness, and maybe what we discussed here before, the sort of culture change. What would you like to see, or where do you see the biggest challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. As we've heard, the technology is there, and even recycling treated sewage effluent, it's been done for over 40 years in some parts of the world, in California, Australia, Israel, for example. These are well-established technologies. But what we've got to remember is everyone in this room is aware of water as an issue. We've all taken the time to come to a conference with water in the title, right? But for many businesses, that awareness is not there. They just don't appreciate the scale of the issues, and they don't realise that water recycling is an option. So raising awareness is really, really important, and that then has a kind of compounding effects. So if they're not aware, you don't have as much uptake of these kind of technologies. So even those in water companies then maybe don't have the experience of working with water recycling. They don't know how to navigate the regulatory system, all the kind of complexities around permitting, waste permitting, water quality implications of no longer discharging the water into the watercourse has then flow implications, which brings further regulatory complexity. And then there's pricing. A lot of the pricing of water is regulated. How do you price recycled water? There are lots of kind of complications in there for businesses and water companies to navigate. And of course, on the other side of that, you've got the regulators who also need to try and navigate all of that complexity. And if you haven't got the experience of doing that, that's very difficult for them too, when water recycling's perhaps not as commonplace as we'd like it to be. But I think that is starting to change. So we're getting lots of focus here in England on promoting water recycling. Lots of work going on with the regulators to clarify their existing regulatory positions, to look at how those can be improved. And we're seeing many projects starting to come through. So I can think of at least 10, if not more, water recycling, large-scale water recycling schemes coming forward in England. And so we'll start to get the learning from those, and it will become much easier, and the benefits clearer and easy to navigate all that complex regulatory landscape. So really what I would say in conclusion is if you're a business who's a large user of water or developing a large water using asset, don't wait for all of that to be clarified. Start the conversations now. Start the conversations with your water company about a potential recycling scheme very early in your project development, and we can really start to work together to transform all of this.
Right. And is it also on the sort of top of that for recycling or reuse, a sort of a challenge around the sort of the difference between potable water and not potable, and the sort of clear hierarchy there?
Yeah, absolutely. What was the phrase before? One size doesn't fit all.
Yes.
And this doesn't help with the awareness, because recycling is a word that's used, and it means so many different things. So we've got rainwater harvesting, grey water reuse, on-site filtering of wash water or whatever, and then using it back in the production. Then you've got treated sewage effluent, a whole range of things. And then you've got a whole range of different uses. Are you using it for cooling, dust suppression, as a raw material in your product, the whole thing? So there's a matrix of things to work through, and all of those have kind of different implications to the business, different technologies required, and different legislative and regulatory treatment as well.
Absolutely. And Sandrine, in your view, where do you see the sort of biggest challenges? And obviously for you as a sort of beverage company, that sort of question of potable water is also a big one, is it?
So I'll mention quickly four different types of challenges. We've all seen that the technology is there, and I mentioned quite a few. The first one for me would be making the business case. Obviously, we're competing a lot with the energy conversation and other conversation, and water is undervalued. And it's very hard to prove the return on investment in terms of water. So it's in different departments, different budgets. So it's very difficult to make the business case and to get it top of mind with everything else. That being said, we in the FMCG businesses, in the food drink businesses, we are very reliant on water, so we have seen that very early on. I think the second point, very specific to our industry as well, is the operational complexity. Because we deal with legacy distilleries that were built hundreds of years ago that were not meant to have circular loop system. We have limited space. So that's very difficult to retrofit. And on top of that, deal with an ever-changing environment. So that's the number 2. Number 3 is fragmentation. So from one distillery to the next, we could be using distilleries from water from municipal sources or from groundwater or spring water or rivers. So it's, again, dealing with different sourcing of the water. And the fourth one is trust. People need to trust that we will never compromise the quality of our products when talking about water recycling. So that's an important one.
Right. Yeah, so that does seem to be underpinning all of the sort of conversation when it comes to water especially, right? Because it's such a sort of precious resource. Rossella, from your experience, you mentioned already a couple of challenges, permitting standards and others. What are the biggest obstacles for you?
I would say that there are things that internally we as a construction company, but I would say that apply to all companies, needs to put in place. And then some more externally facing challenges. In terms of internal, Sandrine mentioned trust, and I could not agree more. And the establishment of clear guardrails really build that trust and really realize the title of this conference, so water being a boardroom priority. So I mentioned before measuring and metering, that absolutely. So that has to be a standard, and we have been mostly consistent in our application, but I know that construction is one of the sectors where innovation tends to stifle in some cases. But again, if all construction actors plays that part, that is absolutely important. And so this permit-based controls, routine sampling, and all these real clear guardrails, that means that your own internal controls are in place. The public and then this external stakeholder have trust. That is absolutely the point. And then you can measure your usage better. And also that guardrails include certain red lines and non-negotiable that have to be put, whatever the location, whatever the project type, the clients, which is about expecting the same standard from all the subcontractor, all the parties that you deal with, particular policies, and immediate action plan if a problem arises. Because I think we have heard in the news so much about illegal discharge. It cannot happen anymore, because then we'll put even more problems towards that harmonization of regulation towards water and recycling. And then with that, like the last internal point, I would say, is real clear monitoring back to your executives. So, because again, water usage on any site per number of hours of productivity, so it should be as important as your financial revenues per month. So again, these are like, I would say, minimum non-negotiable. And then externally, I think similar to what has been said before, clear and harmonized guidelines, particularly in water recycling, and then what is possible and what not, would solve, I would say, a lot of innovation and stifling. And then the very last point, again, I'm not sure how many companies and industry can get a benefit from it. But again, particularly in establishing clear innovation on water, so we have been using quite a lot RDEC claims, because if you use something new, even on a project for the first time, you can get a better return on investment and a tax credit. So that has been particularly useful in an industry like construction, where there's a lot of fragmentation and a lot of barriers on innovation.
Absolutely. And we have about 30 seconds left. I just wanted to check if there is any question. Can we please get the gentleman there? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get the subject focused to home, UK. A couple of big opportunities. One is obviously water reforms, and also the planning, the NPPF reforms, which give an opportunity for the water company to be upfront and be planning with the new developments. So I wonder, as you create like regional plans, for water resource west or water resource east, can you bring the water reuse agenda to a little bit more higher priority? So rather than focusing on building new reservoirs and things like that, so because you can come from top down as well as bottom up. So unless you do the right thing from the right place, the developers wouldn't budget. Yeah, so it has to come from both ends. So can be this an opportunity, and what can you do differently?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, absolutely. Yeah, we can make more of this, and there's huge opportunities through the water sector reforms, the white paper following Cunliffe, and it's about an integration of water planning, spatial planning, building on the NPPF, and absolutely water recycling will start to take a higher seat on the agenda there. And I think the biggest opportunity perhaps is in some of the industrial cluster areas where actually you've got the scale. You can make the investments in water recycling. You can spread the cost over a range of industry, and you've got massive growth there. Hydrogen production, a range of associated developments as well. So real opportunity there.
Wonderful.
Can you do like some mapping, to see who are the kind of the high consumption users, and then do some analysis, at a regional scale, and then cascade down to the sort of the local level. If you do a bit of upfront thinking, then you can implement easier thinking.
Yeah, absolutely wrong. That perhaps we can talk later.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's something to continue talking about. So just thank you so much, everyone. This was a fantastic panel. So thank you, Sandrine, Rossella, Richard, Therese, and thank you, everyone. Please join me in applause for the panelists.